Anyway, all right, so my name is Gary Carner. I am the author of several books on Pepper Adams, most recently, Pepper Adams' Saxophone Trailblazer. I see if we can get it on
Oh,
screen here. It's kind of blurred out,
focus.
huh?
Yeah, focus is a little bit strange, but
Yeah, well, in any case, it's the abridged version of the biography that I wrote of Pepper on Lulu, which is an ebook and it includes 450 links, about half of which have never been released because I've been compulsively collecting material on Pepper since I met him in 1984. But this is our fifth roundtable, and we've got a very distinguished panel and including in this panel are some newbies, which is to say new folks that we haven't had on previous panels. With me, as always, is Aaron Lington. I couldn't do it without him. Aaron, you got a question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
yeah, Kevin, you can hear
Great.
you.
I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Great.
So with me, as always, is Aaron, who makes this whole thing possible. So I want to extend some gratitude to him. And today is Pepper's 93rd birthday. So Sundays at 3 to 5 Eastern always seemed appropriate. But because it was his birthday, we decided to do it today. What's more appropriate than that?
Yeah, wow,
Um,
93. Oh.
yeah, so he is long gone but never forgotten, and that's what's part of this program here. Of course, it's nice to also get for the historical record new facts and figures and information about Pepper. So that's why we do this. We'll be posting this on YouTube. And what I wanted to do first is change the order a little bit because John Vana doesn't have to run to his son's baseball game because of rain in Canada. I want to start with a surprise music clip, and this is for our distinguished guest, Pat LaBarbera. So, Aaron, you want to play
Oh,
this for Pat?
Here we go.
And I
wow.
take I take it you've never heard that.
Where that's Village Vanguard, right?
Vanguard 1983, you, Elvin, and Pepper.
I
Wow.
had I have tapes of that, right? Did I give you tapes of that? I can't remember.
I got it from a collector somewhere, but it included Andy McKee, who I interviewed for that.
Oh yeah, Andy, yeah,
About
sure,
that.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
I interviewed
that,
him. He says to me before I even told him about this recording, he goes, he told the story about how he was hired for Elvin. He rehearsed with Elvin and he said, hey, we have a gig tonight. Can you make it? And he went home and he was in shock.
I
And,
remember him being hired because it was like really loose at that time. We were going through different people, and the bass thing
yeah,
was always up for grabs. And
yeah,
Pepper was, yeah, I remember Pepper was. We were together on that week. I remember that. I have
yeah,
tapes that I think I gave you some tapes of that, I think, but I
it
don't
could
remember
be.
that one.
Yeah, it also includes Jean-Paul Borelli, and it was April 14, 1983. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll clean that up. Aaron's got a bunch of studio tricks, I'm sure that because it got a little saturated there at the end. But were you able to hear it?
Yeah, oh, yeah, I could hear it. I mean, it was faint, but I could hear the
Yeah.
stuff, right? I recognized the. I mean, it's
Yes.
McCoy's tune, Island Birdie, right? That's
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's McCoy Tyner's tune, and he taught it to me, and like just before we went on to play it at a concert in Bracknell, England. Like I had an hour before the concert in England. I flew to London, and they destroyed my tenor on the flight, so I had to bend my tenor over my knee just to be able to get it to play to low D. There was no low B flat, so I had to play soprano on most of the tunes, and so I always ended up playing that tune on soprano because that's the way I learned it.
Wow.
And
Jeez.
Pepper, I don't know. I mean, there were no lead sheets. Well, maybe there were, but I just told him what the changes were in the kitchen, right? The same way I learned the tunes, and he just earballed it like really immediately, got it.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a tricky tune because there's a couple of extra bars there with those shots at the end of the chorus, and he obviously knew what was going on with it. So I don't remember what we did with that tune, but I remember those. Were there other tracks on there? Like, did we do the Long 2/4 or Keiko's Birthday March? Because I know Pepper
Um,
played that with us a lot.
the only things that I know is are five tracks. One of which was Pepper's ballad "Lovers of Their Time," which he just recorded a few years
Yeah,
before. "Doll of the Bride,"
Doll of the Bride. Yeah, I know Domingo. Yeah,
"Harmonique,"
Harmonique, which was the Coltrane Blues,
and My One and Only Love.
Yeah, we used to replay that quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, we were trying to play more familiar material with a few originals, and of course, Pepper recorded the Keiko's Birthday March when I played with him. I remember doing that quite a bit during that week, and because he had recorded it earlier with Donald Byrd, right? Bobby Timmons, I think, and on they call it the Long 2/4.
Right.
But Elvin kind of adapted the melody and called it Keiko's Birthday March. Nobody knows who actually wrote that thing.
There's also a recording 3 days later, You're a Weaver of Dreams, which I think was a feature for you.
Yeah, because I think Pepper played his own ballad and I played my own ballad.
Yeah, he played Now in Our Lives. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then Donald the Bride Again and EJ's Blues.
EJ's Blues, which is one he knew already from playing with Elvin. Yeah.
So I think, Pat, you're probably the most of all the living saxophonists or musicians. You're probably the closest to Elvin of anyone. So you probably know most about Elvin and Pepper. They had a very long and close relationship. So anything you can share with that?
Really close. Right? I mean, well, of course, we played together. I played that time with him, and another time I remember in the south of France. I remember he came to a gig and sat in with us. We played in a hall down in the basement of some place, and Pepper was there doing the when he got mugged. Remember when Pepper got mugged?
Yes.
What year was? That same trip, we were playing in the south of France. He was there, and he came in and sat in with us on this concert that we did in a club there. And then he would come to the dressing rooms, and a lot of times without his horn, just to see Elvin.
Yeah.
And Elvin would call him sometimes Park, sometimes Pepper. He would, they lived together, right? They lived together
in Detroit for a short time when Pepper was upset with his mom and had to flee, and then in the village as well, in the East Village. Yeah, for about a year when Elvin was looking for a place, Pepper just took him on East 6th Street.
I remember that story because I think it was either Pepper or Elvin told me, because John Hendricks was around at the time, and they had a gig, and John Hendricks got sick, and couldn't walk. He was really tired, and Elvin put him on his back and carried him to the Vanguard on his back in order to make the gig, just to make some money.
That was a long walk, Pepper, too.
Yeah, I mean, and Pepper, Pepper would always drop in to see us. I always remember because he kind of wore this tan trench coat, like one of those, like Colombo. They had one of those trench coats in the south of France where the weather is great, and he had his camera on a strap around his neck, and he would come in to see it. Like when he came in to play that gig, that's what he wore. But he had his baritone there because he was doing a concert.
Yeah, I have an excerpt I want to read you actually about that mugging. Maybe you know more about it. In late July, this is from the book. In late July 1980, after a gig in Paris with Elvin Jones, Adams and bassist Andy McLeod, I assume you were on this gig too. Adams and bassist Andy McLeod went out drinking. Pepper was carrying $2,000 worth of cash that he had amassed from various European gigs since his arrival on June 21. After carousing into the wee hours of the morning, quote, finally we parted company, said Andy McLeod. Somebody mugged him and they took all his bread. He came to my room. He said, look, man, I got mugged. He had a lump over his eye. I gave him $100. And then 3 years earlier, just prior to sitting in with Jones's group in Aix-en-Provence, he was carrying all of his earnings from 3 weeks of gigs and was punched in the face during the day. Again, he lost all his money plus the camera he was carrying around his neck.
Okay,
so that's one of the gigs, but do you know about the other one in Paris?
Well, I don't remember. I mean, I know it's so vague back then.
Yeah. It's a long time
ago.
Year?
I could check my books. What do you have the date for the concert in Paris?
1980 or so.
Okay. When somebody else talks, I'll.
July 80. Yeah, we can revisit that later. I just wanted to give you more information about that in case you had any feeling about why Pepper was so. I mean, did he look like a banker and he was sort of little guy and meek, and he looked like a worthy victim?
He kind of just looked kind of like probably somebody that somebody could take advantage of. He sometimes wore that little hat, the little cap that he had, and I don't know, and he looked like an American tourist. Basically, it just kind of stuck out. It's too bad, man. That's, you know. And then I would see him. He would come to Toronto here and work at the club here. I would sometimes. Yeah, Bourbon Street.
Okay,
he would come into Bourbon Street. I wasn't working with him then because I was with Jones. I was out touring, but he was here with local rhythm section. I remember stopping down and seeing him there once at the club. I can't remember who worked with him at the time, but that was it. I mean, he was, you know, like, look, I showed you these before, Gary, right? The music he gave me and his beat thing.
I don't know. Those arrangements or lead sheets?
These are things from like Pepper gave me. He wanted them to play. Elvin wanted some of his music, so he gave me Conjuration.
Ah.
These are all in his hand. Dr. Deep, I think Trentino. These might be from the gig that he did with Denny Christensen, maybe. But I have something like Trentino's on here, and it says he wrote it in Trentino, Italy.
Right.
Like this.
Right.
Bossa Nouveau said, written on the Orient Express. Dr. Deep, and then bass parts for. I think Elvin wanted some of his music, and he on the gig in that gig at the Vanguard, he just gave me a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah, because they were playing a lot of Pepper's tunes. All these lead sheets are posted at pepperadams.com.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah, although there's a secret way to get it for copyright infringement issues. Pat, tell us more about Pepper and his influence. I actually went back to an email you sent me. You said that you quoted a Lester Young quote that he quoted in Little Rudy Tootie on a gig.
And, yeah, he used to play there's a couple of them here. There's like
can you demonstrate?
Here, I'll play my baritone. I don't know if you can hear it. Sometimes Zoom doesn't let you play this. Right? Can you hear this? Does that come through? Okay.
Distorted.
You know that part of the solo? That device is something that Lester Young used to use all the time. There's other stuff that he played of Presidents too, that he played.
Yeah.
He quotes Charlie Parker almost in that. Bird used to play this.
Uh-huh.
That device is one of his. But in that solo, he plays. Looks like an A minor 7 flat 5 or an F13 chord. That was the first solo that I heard, like him playing, right? And when I was a kid in high school, I had that Monk at Town Hall record, and that solo comes on, and that was kind of, that's the one that impressed me the most. That started me kind of listening to his stuff. I like the way that then the ones with Coltrane, Mary's Blues, I think, and Catwalk, I think it's a Catwalk and Mary's Blues, the way he articulated the double time, like the legato phrasing that he had. And the fact that I like the way he laid back, whereas you see Mulligan would be, and then Mulligan was one of my big heroes also, but Mulligan would be more on the top and more almost like a march sometimes when he played. His time was a little bit different. Pepper laid back a lot in his phrasing, from what I could tell. I don't think I remember Jerry Mulligan using diminished scales that much, but Pepper used to use them all the time, So I listened to he and Hank Mobley's were kind of, I got the use of the diminished scale when I heard it there. Then I heard Trey using it in Sonny, but those were the first two guys that I heard kind of using it to the point of, almost overuse, but it was part of their arsenal of tricks. Yeah, but I mean, you hear Bird, you hear, and then again, like he played the wackiest quotes, right? Do you know? I mean, the solos, Gary, right?
Which one, Little Tootie?
Well, no, some of his other solos. He would play like Colonel Bogey March, spade up, that one there. He played Volare, like nobody ever quoted Volare. Nobody ever played those quotes. They were kind of like,
Springtime for Hitler.
yeah, well, almost. And he would. There's one where he plays.
Look at that for Lou Tabakin on a gig.
He plays cute. Ba, da, 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 dee, da, ba, da, 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 dee. You know, I don't know anybody knows the solo there. It's cute. Is it Head Up House? Plays
Well, the
cute.
Colonel
What's
Bogey
Colonel
he
Bogey?
played in the long 2/4.
That's right. That's it.
That's from the Half Note album with that he did with Donald Byrd.
Right.
It was the only one I think with Bobby Timmons.
Yeah, Bobby Timmons, right?
Sorry, 10 to 4 at the 5 spot. That was the one where he played the Colonel Bogey.
Yeah, and he paraphrases the melodies in Little Rudy Tooty, like his lead off and the solo. He kind of uses part of Monk's melody, or the chart itself is kind of coming into his solo, the send off, and he uses a paraphrase of that. I mean, it's clever stuff. It's like an arranger's mind thinking, but I don't recall him as ever doing any kind of big band arranging or anything. It was mostly small group writing.
Yeah, he did one of the charts for Mingus's Epitaph for the town hall concert, but it wasn't until Andrew Holmesy got it to Schiller that they recorded it. Gunther Schiller.
So, Gunther Schiller, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about Pepper and Elvin a little bit. Just how they got along.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody else is. We should let some of the other guys talk, but I mean,
Yeah.
I know they were really close, and Elvin loved them. You could tell just the way they acted together in the dressing room. I would usually just stand back and just kind of watch them talk, and that's almost all I could say about them. You know, like I don't recall much more. You know, but if we keep talking, I may recall other incidents. But
Okay.
I mean, he came around in New York to see us quite a bit. If we were at the Vanguard, he would pop in at least once during the visit if he was in town. A lot of times he was on the run. He was on the road a lot.
Did you ever work with Thad and Elvin and Pepper?
I did some stuff with Thad here in Toronto. He came into Toronto one time and used Rob McConnell and the Boss Brass as a rehearsal band on a Sunday. I remember going down to a recording studio and we played some of his charts. I would meet Thad on the road. His Thad would come by, but he never sat in with us. The only guy that sat in, well, the Detroit guys, well, Curtis, of course. Well, I knew Curtis pretty well, but Tommy Flanagan would come by and sometimes sit in. He and Tommy were pretty close friends too.
Oh yeah, very much so.
And I played with Tommy on backing Ella Fitzgerald. You know, when he came to town here and other places, he would be on the band. But I never played with Thad or with Hank at all. You know, they would come in and Thad more than Hank.
Okay. So you're right. Time is moving ahead. We'll let the next speaker speak and chime in, ask questions, comments. We'll get back to Pepper and Elvin. But Bevan, you ready?
Sure.
You're looking more and more like Ethan Hawke every day.
I was afraid of that. I was afraid you were going to say that.
Sorry, man. So go ahead. You want to talk about compositional aspects of Pepper's various tunes, right?
Well, I'm just going to concentrate on Jurge, rather.
George? I think you pronounce it George.
I always pronounce it Jurge. I thought George Mraz pronounced it that way, but I could be wrong.
No, it's from his name.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys all know this stuff, but when Gary asked me to do this, I looked at some of these tunes that I arranged for a string quartet with Gary Smulyan in honor of Pepper back in the day. I just fell in love all over again with this particular tune because, as I said, you guys all know what happens in this, but I thought it would be cool for students to pick up on this for a number of reasons. Pepper, to me, is one of the great songwriters, tune writers, for a number of reasons. One, that he was melodically very dense, and I mean that in a complimentary way. he put a lot of material into each one of his tunes. And when I started looking at this one and some others in particular, I found a couple of things that I thought were just really interesting. And again, this might be for students. And I say students because I've noticed over the last 10 or 15 years, a real trend towards younger players and students not coming to grips with chromatic harmony and chromatic melody, and having kind of a lack of understanding of some basic harmonic progression stuff, all of which Pepper, deals with in the same old school manner as say Benny Golson, or even going back to Duke Ellington, which I feel was an influence on Pepper in just a general way in terms of his melodic concepts as far as his tune writing goes. Anyway, just to show you, I mean, again, you guys know all this stuff, but I hate to make up names for things, but especially theory-wise, but I just call some of these notes, and we can listen to the tune, but some of these notes, some of these chromatic notes, I call it a unifying chromatic motion, because it sort of sets the stage for the sound of the piece. And I think in a general way, Pepper might have gotten this from Ellington, some of his tunes, but the pickup of the tune already has that kind of motion in it. And then he's got this wonderfully attractive theme, which is so very simple, composed of these 2 5-note motives. And then that's A, what I designate as A. And then he goes into this triplet thing, which I got later obsessed with. Really wonderful line there that he plays always. And another thing about Pepper is that I felt like he always wrote, as we all, ideally should, we write for specific performers, and he wrote for himself. And this is just a beautiful example of that, his speed and dexterity with the triplets. And again, this little chromatic motion at the end, used in a slightly different way from the pickup. And then he starts developing immediately. And this is something I think students should look at, is, developing their ideas a little more before they run away from them or not utilize them enough. That's that same upward motion as in A, so I call it A1. And then he does this beautiful thing in C, which is very reminiscent of Ellington to me, this chromatic motion upwards. And he uses that over and over again later on. We'll see how that happens. There's a little rhythmic thing after that, and then yet a little reuse of that chromatic motion in bar 9, and a little development happening there because he uses it again to push the next A phrase forward. And then he does a wonderful thing going into G major with this development of the triplets, just a time-honored, wonderful thing. Again, I think students don't do this enough, or at least don't learn about it enough. And if you look at tunes like, things that you guys all know, I mean, If I Were a Bell, or How About You, anything like that, where it modulates to a nice different place. And here, that's what Pepper does, completely unexpected place. I mean, the tune is in F, and all of a sudden we're in G. And he develops that nicely. And again, in bar 15, he's got that sort of development of the C idea. And that chromatic thing, again, to me is reminiscent of Ellington. I mean, it could be reminiscent of Mahler or Richard Strauss too. It's just his total command of chromatic motion. And it's always in his tunes. I know people think of Pepper as, this dynamic, incredibly virtuosic, Barry sax player, but he also has this lyrical side to him, which I really enjoy. And that little motion there, which becomes important later on in this tune compositionally, is a good example of that. So anyway, I thought that'd be something cool for students to look at. Again, in C2, he does another little development of that idea. And then he goes to he does a real nice preparation thing in bar 16 and 17, if you go back a little, 16 and 17, before you know it, you don't know it right away, but he modulates. He makes a statement that feels like D flat major, but you're not sure. But it's all a setup to get to the bridge, which starts in yeah, right there. Yeah. Then you know you're in D flat major, but it's a very clever motion melodically and harmonically, and really 16, 15, 16, 17 to start intimating D flat major, but he doesn't quite get there for sure until around 18, and
Bevan,
that's when the bridge starts.
Bevan, may I add a super quick insight to this? I find it very interesting that you're mentioning the connection to Ellington, because how many Ellington, I know this is not a ballad, but how many Ellington and or Strayhorn ballads change keys a third away on the bridge? And this is one of those. It's a lot like that.
Yeah. Well, he understood that motion. I sometimes get frustrated with students because they don't seem to understand those relationships, and certainly, Ellington did, obviously, and Pepper did. That's a great point, Aaron. Yeah. And so he goes into this really lyrical thing on the bridge, making use of that C device, but he develops it, changes the notes, and a beautiful melodic, just wonderful melodic motion. If you notice, the high notes in each statement get a little bit higher, and it kind of climaxes in 22. And then, bam, here's a really interesting chord there, the G minor 7 for me. Actually, the F minor in 22 also. It's just as refreshing as some of Herbie Hancock's things in Dolphin Dance, where he moves surprisingly. It's just a new look. It's the same melodic idea, but it's a new look harmonically a couple of times. He's still compositionally coherent because he's using that element again, developmental wise, from C and from letter C, and then he goes into just before he goes back into the A section, he uses that pickup, little chromatic pickup thing again. At this point, we kind of feel it because it also happens in 23 in a different way. So these are all unifying elements. Another thing that if I had a Barry sax, I'd bang it on students' tushes to get them to notice these things. This coherence, this reuse of elements over and over again. And of course, probably writing it, he wasn't aware of that, or maybe he was, but we don't know. But because these ideas are circulating in his head, his intelligence just drove him to make this so coherent. So it goes back into the A section again, and that wonderful triplet thing happens, which I later got obsessed with. And then he does one little thing. He just changes one little rhythmic motion at 32 rather. Just puts the fourth beat in there instead of it being on the offbeat. And it's a big moment. In some of the performances I've heard, that's really emphasized. It was very intentional on his part. And then, by George, he uses that little, what I call the unifying chromatic thing again in the last bar. But it's just phrased a little bit differently. And you can feel that he wrote it for himself that way. So all these things are just really great, and help unify the tune. Again, I'm big on unification. I'm big on coherence. And of course, none of this would happen without a really solid harmonic progression. And as Aaron mentioned, that movement to a third away in the bridge, that's really, it's set up, but yet it's still unexpected, and it's very colorful too. And it's very lyrical. And yet this tune is mostly played, kind of medium tempo or a little bit up tempo sometimes. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be virtuosic. And yet it does have that lyrical Ellingtonish element in it, which you can make a lot out of. Aaron, if you go to the next, the other set of pages I sent you.
Bevan, do you want me to play the head of this or something from?
Yeah, why don't you play it? It's in that Enja excerpt that I sent you, and it starts. I think I gave you the seconds where it starts.
You did that in one take, by the way.
Wow.
How much of this do you want me to play? Just the head, or do you
Yeah,
want
just the head. Yeah, so we can follow it with the score.
Here it comes.
You know, I think I got one note wrong. I think I think it was 24, 20, 25, the beat 4, right on beat 4. I'm not sure if that's an E or not, but it might have been a D that he played there. I know there's another version where there's an E, but I think I heard him play D there, which would make it even more interesting because it's going down rather than up, which normally in the rest of the tune he does that upward motion there. But it's such a great combination of things, and it's also coherent. I would say I got in the arrangement that I did, which I'm going to just show you the first 5 pages of. I got really obsessed with those triplets because of the vibrant way he played them, and so Gary wanted a string quartet on this and rhythm section, and so. With the string players, often as an arranger, I want them, you know, they are who they are. So I want them to have something to play that's in their vocabulary, because not all of them, as we well know, you know, swing or improvise, or no harmony for that matter. So I got obsessed with these triplets. I got very ambitious. I wrote a very long introduction, but that's another thing about Pepper's tunes, is that they inspire you to use elements of them in different ways because there's so much content and it's so delicious. And so I gave a lot of the triplets to the strings. As you can see, they become something else completely different. But then it kind of leads into what the baritone plays. If you want to just it might be a little hard to hear. I think you have to turn the volume up really high. This is from the live performance, Gary, right?
Yeah, Birdland.
At Birdland, yeah.
Pepper Adams Week.
Yeah.
Let's see what this sounds like here, guys. I do have it queued up at 134, Bevan.
Okay, that sounds right. Okay, well, that's all the score I gave you. But,
yeah.
But anyway, the other thing I should mention is that upward ascending line, I kind of use that compositionally to go down a couple of times with the strings. So they had that also. But it was really the triplets that I got a little carried away with. But I wanted to give the strings something to set the mood up. And here's another thing about this tune is that, like with a lot of Pepper's tunes, the melodic construction is so strong that you can do it in a lot of different ways. There's a number of things recordings where he does it with that medium tempo jazz feel, and here I turned it into a rumba. But you can do that because melodically his ideas are so strong, and again, along with some other guys from that period, Benny Golson I mentioned, the harmonic progression is also very, very strong. So anyway, gives you an idea of what can be done.
I think the Roomba thing works really well, man, with the syncopated nature of the A section of the melody.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Yeah, we do a number of, I think we did a number of things later in the chart with that, and also having Kenny Washington and George.
Yeah. He was reading, wasn't he? He just sat in for that. It's just extraordinary how well he fit in.
Yeah.
Can I say something about why I think the triplet has disappeared among the younger students? It's because of the pentatonic scale. Although Lester Young is the one that kind of really introduced it, mostly in jazz, I think the pentatonic scale has done a lot to get rid of the triplet in jazz because it lays more for 4-note groupings than it does for triplets. And of course, nobody's listening to Lenny Tristano, Lee Konitz, and those guys where the triplet is like home base because of Lester Young. So the younger players don't use it that much. I know that's one thing I listen to when I used to judge music fests, and even now when I hear somebody solo, that kind of like bang, and my mind says I haven't heard a triplet yet. It's kind of like a little kind of a benchmark that I listen for because it's. I see the other rhythmic devices that Pepper's using there, but you're right. The triplet is kind of almost non-existent sometimes.
Wow, Pat, what a great insight. I think that's really important because, you've seen that over many years. The pentatonic thing, I have to say, as admirable as it is, it's kind of easy in that it sort of stimulates younger players to write stuff that doesn't have a lot of harmonic functional motion, and it may end. Some things can be really beautiful that way, but it can get without some real variety. I think you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, I don't hear a lot of other things, quintuplets, sextuplets, a lot of other asymmetric stuff when pentatonic things are used. That's a really important. Giant Steps did it too. The 1, 2, 3, 5. Even though Pepper uses it in Pen Up House, he's using that 1, 2, 3, 5 sequencing in his solo. I think somewhere toward the end. You don't usually. The Giant Steps kind of locked us into eighth notes. I know I'm kind of guilty myself, but I did come from a triplet era, so I'm always conscious about making sure that I do that. Yeah, and when you hear, people like Bill Evans subdivide the triplets, into groups of 2, there's all kinds of possibilities. You kind of wonder why that disappeared. But I think the pentatonic thing has definitely a lot to do with it. But I also think there's just been an oversimplification harmonically. I think it's the fault of pop stuff, with the 3-chord, 4-chord thing. And so a lot of chromatic motion is often missing in people's ideas where it could be utilized. And Pepper was such a great purveyor of that. I just wish more people could grab that. But I'm talking about young people, kids. Yeah. Kids. I say kids below 30. What do I know? But anyway,
there's a great cartoon I could send something. Have you seen the cartoon where there's 3 kind of characters that are standing there? They have harmonic minor scale and altered scale and something written above on top of them, and then there's a little figure like a student standing there kind of with this discouraged look, and then you see this other figure, pentatonic scale, hugging him, and the kid's got this pleasing look on his face. I'll send it to Gary. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, we can post that as part of YouTube. That's fantastic. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'll see if I can get it to you at some point in the next.
with I remember Andrew Holmesy telling me with Coltrane's ascendancy, there's also the after in his wake, no pun intended, lack of humor as well. There's just no humor in people's playing anymore. Pat mentioned quoting. That was a very important part of Pepper's playing. I don't hear that by anyone anymore hardly.
You got to know
Certainly.
old tunes to quote them.
Well, just to chime in
Good
for a
one.
minute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was thinking while listening to all of you talk about some of the things that, and I talked about this the first roundtable I was on, what attracted me to Pepper. It seems like a lot of people are in the younger generation, they're not having any fun. And it also, there's a lack of rhythmic sophistication, like you were saying, but at the same time, like what I'm hearing, having played in a lot of R&B groups when I was younger, like and played music that is coming from the church, I guess, originally. There's more of that, perhaps less harmonic sophistication, but rhythmically, there's more of that drive. There's more of that triplet feel and more of that kind of backbeat, even if it's just implied. And Pepper was really good at mixing the sophistication of somebody like Arthur Honegger that he was a big fan of, harmonically, and yet being able to play, when you listen to him play on Hastings Street Bounce and just playing some gut bucket blues. And I hear a lack of fun in a lot of the younger players. Like they're trying so hard to be hip that they're not. And when I say swinging, it reminds me of a story that I heard about Pepper. Somebody said, "How do you feel about playing the Thad tunes that don't swing?" And he said, "They all swing." And when I use the word swing, I mean groove or cook or whatever word you want to. But there's a real there's a time to be introspective and there's a time to be impressionistic. That's the wonderful Lenny Tristano influence and all that. And then there's a time to just swing your tuchus off. And I see a lot of that missing in a lot of the younger players.
Oh, Kevin, I think you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, I find that a lot of the younger players, they don't get swing. It's funny, there was a movie, at least a decade and a half, 2 decades ago, called This Thing You Do. It was about a rock group primarily, but
Was
Steve
Tom
Vai-
Hanks?
It's a great movie though,
Yeah,
because it's a perfect story of a one-hit wonder.
right.
Yeah, yeah. It
You
was
know
sort
this,
of a
you know this.
Beatles. It was kind of riffing off the Beatles, the Wonders. It was,
Yeah,
yeah,
the Wonders.
great.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is great. But you know what? In the movie, the big hero, or sort of hero, the
Was the
tragic
jazz
hero,
guy, the drummer, right?
the drummer.
Yeah.
But this knocked me out. There were several references to swing in this movie, but it was about this pop group, and I could just, having been in Hollywood for 20 years, I kind of know how, I kind of feel how producers think. They don't really think about this stuff, or they don't even know about it. They might be totally ignorant. You would think that somebody in the music department of the movie would know, but the guy really doesn't. When they talk at the end of the movie, there's an older black guy who comes in to hear the guy play, and he says, "Wow, you really swing." And the guy, the hero, he only attempts to swing for about 4 bars or so, and it's very light on the ride cymbal. It really doesn't. He doesn't dig in. He doesn't have any articulation to it, and then he goes back into a kind of a pop thing, and that happened intermittently because in the movie, because he mentioned going to see Stan Getz or something, and this really struck me, that he didn't. The people really didn't understand that at that time period, geez, Elvin and Tony Williams and everybody were swinging their asses off, and it's not. He doesn't get it, and I find that often with younger players, they play this very perfunctory. Drummers play this very perfunctory swing thing. Unfortunately, this is rather prevalent in LA because there's so much straight eighth note music going on, and it's done really well. often done really, really well, top notch, just superb. But when it comes to swing, there's only a few people who get it, and Pat's brother is, of course, one of them. I just love everything he does. But it's a question of depth, too. Like, they don't get the depth. They want to play a beat, but they don't understand the rhythm, and they don't understand the flow underneath the rhythm. They just want to play a beat. That's it. But there's so much more to it than that. And I find that this also seeps into horn players as well. Swing is one of the miracles of American civilization. It really is. Why is it not, why don't we have a swing era month? I know we have Jazz Appreciation Month in February, but swing, and think about the way it influenced, some early hip hop people with New Jack Swing and stuff. You'd think there'd be more. Once in a while with those guys, you find some reverence for it, but not that much. And not much.
But even,
okay, I'm off the pedestal here.
I was alluding to as well, not just swing in and of itself, though, but even styles like, I did my first album at the tender age of 50. And the first tune I put on was a boogaloo, just because I'd been listening to some of the George Benson cookbook stuff, and it was kind of going through my mind, and I've been listening to a lot of Ronnie Cuber, but it's the idea of finding a groove, I guess, and sort of, and like coming back to what Pepper said about how it all swings. When you listen to a tune like Us, of course it's not dang, dang, a dang, dang, a dang swing in the true sense of the word, but there's an infectious feeling. It's almost hard to, it's visceral. It's almost hard to put into words, really, other than it just feels authentic.
Sanctifying.
Yeah.
Comes out of the church.
That might be kind of the key. Yeah.
I like, that's a good word for it, Gary, I think.
Yeah. But all those guys grew up in the church, and people nowadays don't. So they didn't have that reinforcement of that feel every single week of their life when they were 8, 9, 12 years old.
Yeah.
All right, John, you want to take over? John Vana?
Sure. When Gary asked me to do this particular forum and find out the great solos that I liked, I did a lot of digitalizing for Gary, and so I have a bunch of live recordings. And of all the live recordings that I like, one of my favorites is from the Allery Club in Providence, Rhode Island, and he did a 2-night gig in 1977 on the 12th and 14th of December. And it's, in my mind, one of his best recorded dates. And I don't mean recording quality, because the recording quality is kind of weak, actually, but the playing is incredible. It's basically 9 minutes of pure drive and forward motion. It reminds me a lot of the quote from Bill Goodwin when he said that, he played so hard for so long on a particular evening that he felt like his arms were going to fall off. Just because there was so much energy with Pepper that he'd never let down. Like the Benedetti Parker recordings, this is the only recording that I know of, the only date that I know of that was just Pepper solos recorded. When the solo gets done, then the recording and the recording person who did the actual recording in the audience turns the recording off and just picks it back up when Pepper starts the solo again, or does 4s or 8s or whatever. In this tune's case, 8s. Very little repetition in this tune. Articulation, as always, is crystal clear. That's one of the reasons the time locks so well. He spends most of his time in the middle register, but does use the full register. And I think the lower register, as in so many cases with Pepper, is particularly effective. Uses occasional quoting, as has been brought up, which is at this tempo, the tune Lover, at the up tempo is pretty hard to do sometimes, but he does it very well. Uses long 8th note lines to enhance swing, but he also breaks up the rhythms creatively. So this is Lover, and I thought I'd just have Aaron play this. I don't know if you want to. It's 10 choruses, and then the recording stops and picks up the drum solo, and then there's 2 choruses of 8s, but at least maybe through the 10 choruses would be good.
Yeah.
And there's the end of that solo.
Wow.
So one of the things that I took out of that was, Pepper's really disdain for repetition. You could tell that he's sometimes about to repeat an idea, but then he leads himself away. And Charlie Parker was really good at that, and Cannonball, I think, was excellent at that as well. The fact that when I listened to the ride cymbal in that recording, I'm amazed that the ride cymbal just didn't break in half. I mean, he's just beating the hell out of that thing so much that I think that it's just amazing the drive that's put into it. And Pepper is, that's 10 choruses, and I get the feeling that Pepper could have done 10 more choruses with the greatest of ease, just no problem.
I'm also amazed that rhythm section could maintain that tempo for that
intensity. Yeah,
unbelievable.
Now, when was this?
That was 77, December 77. of 77. Yeah,
just probably just before he left the Fed Mel.
It was after.
Just after.
Oh, after, yeah.
He was on fire after that. He left in August of 89 or 77, and so this is one of the first true solo gigs that he had after the Thad and Mel band.
He's building a career now as a solo artist, touring solo artist.
Yeah,
and he had a lot to get up.
That's one of my favorite recordings that shows the true energy that guy had, and played a low saxophone, but it comes clearly what he's after, and you can hear it too. It doesn't have to be alto or tenor to be in the upper register and be able to pick it up. But like I say, just energy and to spare. It just always impresses me on that recording, that particular, and the rest of the date is just that way as well. But that particular recording I really like because of the just raw energy and drive.
I wanted to comment. Sorry, if I
can. Capers.
One of the comments that you made after playing the recording was talking about how Pepper didn't like to repeat himself, and in the last sort of roundtable that we did, we were talking about the idea that you could hear Pepper composing as he was improvising a lot of the time. Like he would take an idea and he really knew how to develop a motif, but he was very strong in developing that motif so that there was a really strong compositional element to the way he would improvise. And the fact that he could do that often at a breakneck tempo like that with the intensity and again using the whole range of the horn and all of that stuff, just it emphasizes his mind, like being able to combine that intellect with something that also just swung like hell.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah,
I just mentioned that he quoted Canadian Capers, almost did it twice, and that's our Thanksgiving in Canada tomorrow and today. So.
Yep. Anyway, so that was my favorite. Like I say, one of my favorite recordings of all the live stuff that I helped Gary digitalize. That's always been one of my favorite dates, and the whole date is just fantastic. But the energy really shows through on the tune "Lover." It's one
of the few you didn't transcribe, and I can see why for a bunch of different reasons.
Right. Yeah, it was. It would take a lot of work to do that, but definitely worth it. Sometime I'll do that. Sometime in the future.
Okay, we'll post it too.
I'd love to see that.
Those of you who don't know, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'd love to see that transcription at some point.
Yeah, at pepperadams.com, if you click transcriptions, there's something like 100, 110 transcriptions of Peppers. Yeah. And half of them are done by John. And then a lot of the other ones are done by Adam Schroeder. And then there's just stuff here and there. All right, so we've got 2 more speakers, and both of them, both Aaron Lington and Kevin Goss, are doing discussions about the same recording, which not the same tune, but the same the master, Pepper's Second Date for Muse. So who wants to start? I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to, Aaron, Kevin, you want to go first, and then Aaron can finish up?
I'm happy to continue.
Sure.
Go ahead, Kevin.
All right.
I'm easy, reasonably cheap. So the uh, the downside with this is that I've transcribed bits and pieces, but in a perfect world, I'd have transcribed the entire solo, and I have a project, but I'm not quite able to play today. But I did. I wanted to talk about My Shining Hour because it was one of those solos. It came out when I was 12 years old, and I didn't quite discover Pepper until a couple of years later. But it was one of those solos that really caught me because the ferocity that he cut through the changes is one thing, but his sense of humor, his articulation, again, his use of the entire instrument, and just it was one of those things that made me stand up and take notice, I guess. And so, in analyzing it a little bit more closely, I've sort of found that there's a lot to dig into. So I'm hoping that as you can see, I'm using two screens because I was having some issues with my laptop, and so I'm using my iPad. But anything that I'm sharing is still on my laptop. So I'm hoping that I can make this work. I went to Audacity and I cut the MP3 down in the interest of time, because I didn't know how much time we had, and I cut it down to Pepper's solo, essentially. But the song "My Shining Hour" comes from the album "The Master." I believe Pepper won a Grammy for that one. Is that the one he won for, or was he nominated?
He was nominated for that
Not,
and a few other records. He never won.
you're right.
He
Yeah.
lost to John Coltrane and Bill Evans in two instances.
Uh, worthy opponents, but the fact that he was still alive at the time is sort of a shame he didn't win. But he still never hit the Downbeat Hall of Fame either. So there you go. Even though I submit his name every year. But looking at the My Shining Hour, he comes in. One of the things that he did that I really hadn't heard anybody else do is he comes in after the head with a piano solo, and then after Tommy Flanagan plays a few choruses, then there's piano and drums trading, and then there's really only one chorus of Pepper and Tommy and is it Billy Hart on that one, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it might be Leroy Williams.
It is Leroy Williams. Billy
Yeah.
Hart's on Reflectory.
Yeah.
And and it's funny that they only trade the three of them for one single chorus. I'm betting it's probably because of the length of an LP. And so then Pepper comes in, guns a-blazing. And so, before I play the solo, I just made a few notes. You talk about quotes. I mean, at 3 minutes and 20 seconds in, you hear the peanut vendor. Then he plays Comedy Tonight. Then there's just a snippet. He starts to play The Lady in Red and decides not to go through with it. But you can hear it. You can hear that it's there. And then, at about 4.5 minutes in, the Barrel Polka comes in. Now, one of the things I also found interesting is that he quotes a few times. Must have had Benny Carter on the mind, because he quotes Benny Carter's Squatty Roo, and he used that motif quite a bit, and then he brings it back in his cadenza at the end of the tune, which is a whole other topic. It also sounds like he starts going into "Make Each Moment a Special Moment." He starts quoting that tune, and then there's, after about 2 solid minutes of pretty much 8 notes and hard driving, he starts breaking up, becoming more syncopated, and starts really breaking up the rhythmic feel. And it starts with that "Make Each Moment" kind of thing. The other thing that I hear at different times is he hints at Dizzy's "Things to Come" at varying points, in the song. So. And then, of course, he comes into the cadenza, and to me, that's a tour de force. I mean, if I was going to do a comparison, if you've ever seen the Pixar movie Up, the first 20 minutes could be an Oscar-winning movie in and of itself, and then it goes into the regular part of the story. And I sort of feel that way about Pepper's playing on this particular tune. If he hadn't played the cadenza, it would be a masterpiece. If you only had a recording of the cadenza, it would be a masterpiece. But when you get to enjoy all of that back to back, it's just absolutely stunning the way it's all put together. And it doesn't seem to me like Muse Records or Pepper Adams or anybody had the time to do any sort of studio wizardry like they do now. I mean, I expect this was probably recorded in a take or two, and there it is. So I'm going to try and share the tune with you, and beginning after the chorus with the rhythm section. Genius.
Listen to that. Listen to that articulation. That articulation will compete with anybody's. I think
It's insane.
Oh yeah.
That it locks the time in so well. I can't think of any other baritone player who can do that well.
It is
No, and it's
so good.
it's funny because, you know, like I said, like a lot of you, I started this journey as a kid, and you know, now I'm well into middle age, and like,
The Muppets. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
He did it on the Grammy Awards show. It became a big hit. He first did it in Scandinavia and got a big hand. He did it on Rhythm Changes.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, he quotes he quotes the little opening motif of the Eber Concertino da Camera,
Right.
which is it's a classical saxophone, alto saxophone repertoire piece.
Right.
that's what that is, right?
Yeah.
I heard Rain Check too, quite a
and
bit.
Poor Johnny One Note, right? Poor Johnny One Note and Canadian
Yeah.
Capers again, right? So,
And Rosamunde.
and then he expands on the Canadian Capers. Ba-do-ba-do-be-da, and then he stretches it out.
And you
It's
can hear
amazing. He can drop those in without even thinking of them. Like, I mean, it's a lot of people program that I'm going to play this or I'm going to, but they just come right off the top of his head.
you can hear a lot.
Well,
of
and some of the really obscure things that he would quote too, you know, like I said, sometimes years later, when Aaron mentioned the Concertina da Camera, I'd heard Phil Woods do that different times, and of course on baritone down an octave, not even thinking about it, I didn't play any of that repertoire on baritone, and for whatever reason, it's like, oh yeah, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things,
Kevin, Phil Woods does that quote on. There's an album called Live at the Showboat.
Right.
oh yes,
And,
that's my Bible.
Yeah, he plays a long cadenza at the
On
beginning,
cheek to cheek.
and he plays that same quote.
Right.
Yeah.
But that the thing I was going to
Phil's all-time great albums, by the way.
oh yeah, no question. Desert Island Disc for me. But listening to Pepper, the cadenza, one of the things up to that point, I had heard people who played with chops galore. They'd play a cadenza, and it would be this big tour de force of technique, which of course it is. But I love how he would play with the time, even within a cadenza, the same way he might have introduced a ballad. The sense that, again, you quoting the Concertina da Camera or playing with the time, even the Muppet Show theme is not at a breakneck tempo or whatever. He sort of eases into it and then commits to it. And he commits to the gag, which is the best. I think I remember reading an interview in Downbeat where they talked about his Grammy appearance, you know, and you could see him looking down the bell like Zoot did, you know. And it comes down to what I said earlier. It's funny reading Gary's biography, which I just finished, and thank you for that. It's interesting to see how, I don't want to use the word bipolar, but he was quite binary in the sense that here's a guy who was very funny, had a really quick wit, apparently was a lot of fun to be around, and yet also seemed to be a very tortured soul in a lot of ways. And hearing that the way he played, I think it was an outlet for him in a lot of ways. Like he could play, he never played in a sentimental way. Even if he played played a ballad, I said in the first time I did one of these that I was turned off by his ballad playing because I was used to Jerry Mulligan, and I was used to hearing vibrato. And when I heard him play "You're My Thrill" on 10 to 4 at the 5 spot, I thought it sounded really harsh. I mean, I dig it now, but I think as you listen to Pepper, and those of you who knew Pepper, you can sort of see his personality just shining through in his music. Here's a guy who was incredibly intellectual, didn't always have an outlet for it other than playing, and yet he also had this wicked sense of humor, and it all sort of intersects into his solos. I mean, it's not just technique for the sake of technique. I was listening to some of the arpeggiations that he was doing in the cadenza and also throughout the solo. I only ever heard Pepper go into the altissimo maybe once. I mean, there's a couple of F sharps on this one, but I think on Urban Dreams, on that album, he goes up to an altissimo A, and it's the only time I had ever heard him go above sort of the normal range of the horn, whereas somebody like Nick Brignola, who was influenced heavily by Mulligan and Pepper, Nick was up there all the time, and Ronnie Cuber and guys like that.
Yeah, he plays a few high A's on the album The Master, on Lovers of Their Time, the ballad.
Okay.
He plays at least one high A. I think there might be another one or two on that solo, but your point is well taken. Yeah, compared to maybe Ronnie or Nick Brignola, hardly ever did it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people said Pepper played baritone like a baritone, which makes sense. And again, a lot of the players that I love, I mean, really Mulligan and Shaloff were the only guys who played baritone more like a tenor. I think most of the other great influential players, did approach it that way. But Pepper's responsible. I consider him Harry Carney's the father of the baritone sax, but Pepper is the father of the modern baritone sax.
Yeah.
You know what I noticed too is that the concept of repetition, the disdain for repetition, he does use repetition in this solo, but it's for thematic purposes.
Exactly.
So not that he's running out of ideas, but it's to develop a theme, and I think that's something that needs to be brought up, because repetition is not always a bad thing. It just depends on how you use it.
It was very. That's what I was saying earlier. His solos were very compositional. There was so much motivic development, and it wasn't repeating because, again, exactly like you say, not because he was out of ideas, but more because he was consciously promoting cohesion within his own solos.
Yep.
Same as in his writing too. I mean, it's the same thing. It's
For
interesting.
sure.
It's interesting that you brought up, his intellectual side. His virtuosity is so overwhelming that I think for a lot of people, and again, not to carp on this, but for a lot of young players, that's the goal, is the virtuosity and, showing the information that playing the information but with him, it wasn't like that. It was so balanced. The fire and the intellect together.
Well, not to change topic, but I'll just make a quick anecdote. One of the best things I ever saw was one of those old PBS Jacksonville Jazz broadcasts, and they had a bunch of all-stars of different generations, and Benny Carter was there, and Woody Herman was there, and Freddie Hubbard was there, and Phil Woods, and Remo Pommier, and a bunch of guys. And Phil got up, even Freddie, both Phil and Freddie went to play on kind of a slow blues. They didn't play anything faster than an eighth note. Here were these guys that had technique all over the place, but they didn't want to dump all over, Woody Herman, who was quite old at that point. And they were paying respect to the other people on stage. And with all that technique, they just both totally restrained and swung their asses off like you wouldn't believe. And I still remember that 35 years later, just how much an impression that left on me, and how I don't hear people doing that. A lot of the younger players don't necessarily know how to just play me a melody.
Mm-hmm.
That recording was Pepper's last commercial recording with his original setup, wasn't it? I think it was that summer of 1980 that his mouthpiece went.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he sounds so great there.
Yeah.
Oh, unquestionably. And I mean, he sounded okay on the Dukoff Pepper never played a bad note. And I love the Urban Dreams album for the playing and the writing. I mean, it was still a great album, but I wish, it's in a way, it's too bad, that's going to come out wrong, but it's such a shame that he got sick, because I think the last couple of things he was playing that Lawton, and he had a great sound on that, and I think it really would have worked for him, but then his body was working against him, and we'll never really know. You know, he wasn't like Nick changed mouthpieces, you know, the way most people change underwear. And you know, Pepper stayed on the same setup for years and years and years, and I think that last setup was probably the best substitute for what he had been using previously,
with
more so than yeah, because the Lawton is sort of halfway between a Berg and a Link.
Well, Aaron, you okay? I'm sorry, John.
I was going to say that synthetic reed, you know, really helped with that bark quality. That was really one of the things that I like about his later playing, 84, 85, and there is the real guttural raw sound that he got because of the largely because of the synthetic reed that he was playing, which
when he played a 5. You know, I mean, his mouthpiece was fairly closed. It was only a 6, but he played a number 5, very synthetic. You know, whereas a lot of the guys like Ronnie and Nick played larger tip openings with softer reeds. So it's a whole different approach.
Right, right.
Aaron, you want to speak to that? You know all about this stuff.
Yeah,
the mouthpieces at least.
Yeah, I play a Lawton, and I've played Bergs before, like Pepper, the metal Bergs, and I do like them a lot. I don't know if you gentlemen, the fellow saxophonists on the panel, have experienced the fact that the metal Bergs have a slightly larger shank on them, and you often have to wrap tape around the cork or get a thicker gauge cork for the mouthpiece to fit snugly. And it was for one of that and some other reasons that I ended up gravitating toward the Lawton. And I've played my Lawton for, well, I bought it new in 1993 or 4, and I've played the same mouthpiece since then. So for 30 years. Yeah, I want
to get my mouthpiece. I can't remember what it is anymore.
Well, I stopped playing metal mouthpieces probably 35 years ago. I got a really nice Berg rubber that I used for years, and then Phil Barone made me a really nice rubber Link that I used for years until a dear friend of mine passed away about a little over a decade ago. And his main mouthpiece had been made by Phil, and he gave that to me before he passed away. And on my setup, I play a Yamaha low A, although I'm in the works of getting a B flat horn, but to go with it. But I guess my point is, it was the holy grail on that instrument. Like I always said, I can go from mulligan to cuber in 30 seconds, and having that flexibility. And I found now that I don't like to futz with equipment. I'm, I want to be Scott Robinson, I guess. So I got custom mouthpieces for all of my instruments just so that they'll do what I want them to do. And then I haven't changed anything. I've been on the same alto mouthpiece for 15 years, the same tenor mouthpiece, the same, rather than futz with gear, you find what works and you go with it. And I'm sure as my body changes, I may have to do some adjustment, but I'm not old enough yet to worry about that yet.
Back when I was at North Texas, we had Bob Mincer come in and do a clinic, and inevitably the question comes up about mouthpieces and reeds, because it's a room full of saxophone players, and Mincer goes, here's the secret to a great sound. He goes, find a mouthpiece and reed combination that you don't have to fight with too much, and then play on it for 20 years. that's
yeah.
But it's true though. I mean, what I've always said to my students is, you have to find something that makes you work a little bit. It shouldn't be too easy. You have to find something that allows you're going to sound like you no matter what you play on, if you've got a tone concept. It's a question of how much work you have to do to sound like you.
Yeah, I found the only one I've ever played when I moved to Canada was the 110/2 Berg SMS, or no, M facing. And then eventually I got this Rico Royal B5, which actually works great when I'm subbing. I was playing with the symphony and had to play tenor, alto, soprano, and baritone, like all of them. And that one, the Rico one, just seemed to. But I stopped playing baritone. I sold my baritone years ago, and gave up because I figured, there's guys who are dedicating themselves to the instrument, and I wasn't going to play it. That's a Lawton, is it?
This is my Lawton that I've played for
Lawton,
30 years. I love it.
That's a B, right?
8-star B, yeah.
Yeah, Nick played a double B, of course, because he liked the pea shooter mouthpieces. I was just going to say, while we're nerding out, those Rico Royal baritone mouthpieces are the best bargain on the market. I don't like the Metalite. Those Graftonite, a B7, if I'm playing somewhere that I'm worried about my mouthpiece getting knocked around or dropped or something, I'll use one of those as a backup, and the rest of their mouthpieces are garbage as far as I'm concerned, but their baritone mouthpieces for 30
really
bucks, you can't go wrong. It's made like a good classic Berg Larson.
As an educator, say the name of that again. I want cheap.
Yeah, the Rico Royal, get the Graftonite, not the Metalite. And you can put kids on a B5. If you've got a more advanced player, a B7, they go up to 9. But I find with baritone you need a little bit of a bigger tip opening than what you would use on alto or tenor.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Grafton
I have the 5,
B5.
but I mean I'm.
Is that Graftonite B5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know what? And I mean, again, what we did at the school where I just retired from, we got some B5s and we got a B7. So if it was too closed for a kid that's more advanced, the 7 is there. And again, for an extra $30, it's not like you're spending your entire budget.
It's for a college band, but I've got alto players who are like, "What do I play?" I'm like, "I don't know."
Gary, what year was that? What year was that thing in Paris? Can you tell me? Was it 81? You said, or 80?
Are you talking about what we played initially?
Where Elvin was
with
playing.
You. 83. Let me look it up. 83 at the Vanguard.
And the Paris one was the same year?
Oh, wait. You talking about when he got mugged?
Yeah, that's I'm looking at my calendars from the 80s.
Okay. Well, why don't we, we'll exchange emails on that. Let's give Aaron the floor so we can finish the roundtable. Yeah, and I'll definitely follow up with you about that. Thank you. Didn't know you had a book like that.
I go back.
Yeah, it's a buddy.
Dude. Are you ready for my section, Gary?
Yeah.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I hope it's not a problem that Kevin and I ended up, choosing the same album. But I'm going to talk about Chelsea Bridge, his solo on Chelsea Bridge. Of course, this is from The Master, which was from 1980 and was mentioned before as Tommy Flanagan, George Mraz, and Leroy Williams. And of course, Chelsea Bridge was written by Strayhorn. I should have looked up the year, probably 1940 or somewhere in there, maybe 41. Sounds about right. And right away, one of the things that I want to talk about on this that I've always thought is kind of curious, and maybe one of you guys know the origin of this. If you look up a lot of old lead sheets for this tune, the first chord is like this E flat, Lydian dominant sort of sound that then goes down a whole step to the, and then back and forth with those sounds. Pepper does this minor major 7. Starts B flat minor major 7, then down a whole step. It actually comes from the same mode of the melodic minor, those two different chords, but I don't know of a recording before Pepper's where those minor chords are being used rather than the dominant chords. Maybe one of you guys know who started doing that. I doubt that the first time it was ever done was in 1980. I'm sure someone did it before then. I just don't know who it might have been. Does anyone have any ideas, or maybe if you think about it, you can tell me. But I'm not. Does everybody understand kind of what I'm talking about there? This is.
Oh yeah, it's the upper extension of the tune. Yeah.
This is my transcription I had done of this solo a number of years ago, and so, here's this is the baritone sax key, concert B flat. So concert B flat minor major 7 to F minor major 7, whereas the Strayhorn lead sheet would say E flat 9 sharp 11 to D flat 9 sharp 11. So that's one thing right away that I always thought was kind of neat on this, that I personally liked. I've heard other arrangements with the original changes. For example, there's a Buddy Rich big band chart on Chelsea Bridge that uses Strayhorn's original changes. I like this way Pepper did it a lot better with the minor chords. I just think it sounds a lot nicer. That's one thing about this solo that I really, really like. Another thing is, and I will do a little bit of playing here, I forget who it was on the panel earlier that was talking about, his repetition, and it being, the repetition was more driven by motivic development rather than not knowing what to play or something like that. And so my take on this particular solo, there's 4 different motifs that he uses. The very first one here is this large leap of a 7th. This is this pickup right in here, and then down to the major 7. So that's the beginning of this motive 1, and I have it all labeled here. You guys, happy to share this with you guys if you want to check it out. This second motive that he develops a number of times is basically just using, it's kind of just a pattern on the minor major, the melodic minor scale. So that's this thing here, and he does it in the different keys. The third motif that you end up hearing, I gotta find it in my transcription here. Here it is. But again, it's another sort of pattern on the minor major 7. It's just sort of minor major 7, that kind of thing. Motive 3, and then the motive 4 is this kind of cool idea that he uses over a 2/5, and he plays this. Well, I'll play it for you guys here. And he does it there, motive 4, and I think as I was looking back, I was pointing to the wrong one. He does it here. And then he repeats it again. And to me, this is kind of the most, for lack of a better term, Pepper Adams-y kind of line, I think, in this solo. It's one of the ones that I would, if someone asked me, like, who's playing this solo? If you were to somehow remove the tonal quality, which is a giveaway for Pepper also, but this particular lick, this 2/5 lick, especially what he does here at the end of it, using on a I'll do it in this key, so it's a B7 flat 9 concert, and the fact that he tends to outline a concert A flat triad on these types of things. It's like a 13 flat 9 sound. So you can hear like that would be an F triad when you transpose it. I know I got a lot of sharps in here, but you can see like here's the A natural and the C natural and the F natural. So these F triads, A natural, F natural. He does it earlier in the tune as well, right here. So it's just like this F triad over the G7 flat 9 or A flat 7 flat 9, which to me is like a really, really, sort of hallmark Pepper Adams line or lick. So let me just play this for you guys here real quick, the solo. We can follow along, and let me cue it up quickly here. Here it comes. And then he ends his solo on, you know, that's the melody of the end of the melody of the bridge anyway, and so that's his cue for the rhythm section to go on to the last A of the form. He does this one quote here. Maybe this is a little bit of a stretch. I hear this though as Gigi. I pulled this up. I'd be curious what you guys think. This is it right here.
Oh, Gigi.
Check it out.
While you've been growing up before my eyes.
He does it again here.
Gigi. You.
I hear it as that. It's a little bit of a variation of it in this second measure. So I hear that as a quote from that musical. That's an old musical, but I mean that's the only quote I hear in this solo.
Bar 67. Bar 67 is a quote from some tune, and I can't place it. Yeah, bar 67.
Yeah.
I can't think of what it is.
You know, the quotes in that My Shining Hour example that was played, you know, those are a lot more sort of obvious.
Yeah, that's a fragment of something, but I can't place it.
Yeah, but I also really love his use of diminished scales. I mean, that had been brought up.
Oh yeah.
Earlier, of course, Sonny Stitt did a lot of that as well. But this is just a masterful solo. I love how where you might, for example, in My Shining Hour, the time is really, really just bang, 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 bang like that. And with this one, of course, because it's slower, there's a lot more pushing and pulling with how the rhythms lay in the measure, it makes it challenging to transcribe, and kind of if you want to play along with it, it's a little more challenging, but it's a lot of fun. So anyway, that was the solo I wanted to talk about. I mean, it's just I love his ballad playing quite a bit. I love Mulligan's ballad playing too, for that matter. But there are things I like about Pepper's ballad playing that I like about in a different way from how Mulligan would play a ballad. So anyway, that's kind of all I have to say on that one, unless anyone has any questions.
It's a great transcription, Aaron. Really great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the romanticism that's in, you don't think of that with him maybe right away, but like his tune writing, the romanticism, like the beginning of this solo, on the minor major sevenths, it's just, I mean, that could have been, late romantic, Mahler or something.
It's very
rhapsodic, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Strayhorn's signature sound right there. That I mean, not the minor major seventh, but his, Lydian dominant.
Yeah.
Chord. I mean, I've got right in front of me. I've got the lead sheet to "Flowers of Love Something." Passion Flower does
all
the same.
Over the place, yeah.
Same thing, yeah. Very, very Debussy-ish.
Yep.
Sort of ambiguous harmony right from the beginning. And you can just playing that around anywhere you want. Yeah. Was that quote that we were trying to figure out? Is that "Kiss to Build a Dream On"?
That's it. Give me a kiss to build a dream on, right?
Oh,
that's it. You got it.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm pretty sure that's it. Have you ever done a thing, Gary, where you put all Pepper's quotes in there like they did with Charlie Parker? There's a Charlie Parker website that lists every quote that Bird ever did in all of his solos. They pick up every quote and go through it. I was wondering if you ever did that.
If anybody wants to volunteer, I will post it, but it'll probably take a lifetime and a half to finish it.
There's only a few old guys who remember those tunes, though.
That's right.
Anyway,
right. I'll ask Jeremy Kahn or somebody like that, unless you want to volunteer, Pat. You're retired now.
I emailed you that cartoon, by the way. Check your email.
Yeah, I did see that. It's hilarious. So, any last thoughts? Let's wrap it up. We've been going for 2.5 hours almost. It's been wonderful. I really thank all of you for participating. Any last thoughts?
I've been on that website before, but how do you download the transcriptions? You said there's a trick to it, and all I see is the recorded version, but not the PDFs.
Aaron, can you go to the pepperadams.com and I'll demonstrate it? I guess
I will.
Now that Claudette's passed away, maybe I don't have to keep it as much a secret.
So check this out, guys.
If you go to Adams Compositions.
Yeah, let me make this a little bigger here.
Yeah.
So there's
just a second. Oh, sorry. Hold on, just a second. I got to make this. Okay. So all right.
So you can choose any tune. Just grab anyone you want.
Yeah.
Then there's a box around the commercial releases of whatever we've been able to find for people recording Pepper's music. But then if you put the cursor in the upper right-hand corner like that and click it, there's a hidden link. And then if you click it again, if you click it one more time, it comes into Better Relief.
Yeah.
And almost all of them are in Pepper's hand because I was able to get all those. The ones that aren't in his hand are ones that people did when they did the recording sessions for me. But that's how you do it. Cat's out of the bag now. So
I thought I had to have an Enigma machine here to figure that out. Okay, got it.
Yeah, just wait.
We wanted to hide the link because we were concerned about lawsuits. Because it's copyrighted material, of course.
Yes, my lawyers will be contacting you in the morning.
That's fine. Please.
Anyway, thanks for that, Gary. And
and thank you all for participating. John is writing a book with Noah Pettibone, I guess, which should be out by the centennial of Pepper's birth, right, John?
Right.
That's the plan. So
2030.
we have. What do we have? We've got 7 years?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm looking forward to that, and we will get when Adam finishes doing his magic with all this stuff. You'll get a copy of this before we post it on YouTube or around the same time we post it. And this will be number 5 of what may be an ongoing program. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, great.
But thank you all so much. Any last thoughts by anybody?
Yeah,
No,
I'm
I
going to
just,
stick my beak in quickly. I just feel so honored to be included with the likes of you folks. This is fantastic, and you know, it's just. I guess the one comment I'm going to make quickly is we've talked sometimes about other players, about other baritone players or whatever. It's all just one big piece of the spectrum and of the puzzle, right? And like you can dig Pepper Adams as we all do, and it doesn't mean that you're a traitor, of course, if you also like Jerry Mulligan. I used to say, my at one point my 2 favorite saxophone players were Stan Getz and Mike Brecker, and it doesn't get more opposite than that. And of course, now my favorite tenor saxophonist or baritone saxophonist is whoever I'm listening to at the moment.
I also want to say that I feel so lucky that because of my age, I've played with Pepper, Jerry Mulligan, Ronnie Cuber, Nick Brignola. I mean, all those guys, those baritone players. I actually was on the bandstand with all of them. And for me, at the time, it was just, guys that were around. But now, historically looking at it, I feel really honored to have known them and met them.
Yeah. Indeed.
Well, nice. Let's conclude it with that and enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Gary.
thanks again
Gary.
for
Happy
your
Thanksgiving,
feedback.
Pat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Happy
Thanks to
Thanksgiving,
everybody.
So long, fellas. Bye.